Everyone knew it. You know it, and he, Alexander Beliavsky, probably knew it too. Mikhail Tal was simply the deadliest attacking chess player the world had seen. Beliavsky was good, but it's 1974 in the USSR Championship, and playing black against Tal in a Soviet Union chess tournament was not so appealing. So Beliavsky had no choice but to play Tal like it was the end of the world. And oh yes, it would be the end of the world all right. But for who? Tal opens with pawn to c4, the English opening, and honestly, this is almost surprising. You'd expect Tal to go pawn to e4, get the center, start attacking immediately. But no, he's playing the English. Flexible, strategic, a bit mysterious. Maybe he's trying something different today. Beliavsky responds with pawn to c5, mirroring Tal's structure. Okay, symmetry. Knight to f3, knight to f6, knight to c3, knight to c6. Development is flowing smoothly. Nobody's punching yet. They're both still circling, sizing each other up. Pawn to e3, pawn to e6, solid foundations. Pawn to d4, and after pawn to d5, we can see the centers forming, but it's all still very civil. It seems to be a balanced English, and this doesn't feel like a Tal game yet. Where's the chaos we well know from this man? Both players continue logically with pawn to a3, pawn to a6, expanding quietly on the queen side. Pawn to b3 from Tal, planning to fianchetto that bishop. Beliavsky replies bishop d6, nice central development. Bishop to d3, and black castles kingside. Smart. Get the king to safety before things explode. And they will explode. This is Tal. The question is when. Tal castles too. Black plays pawn to b6, preparing his own fianchetto, while Tal brings out the bishop to b2. Beliavsky captures pawn takes d4. White recaptures, and black's bishop comes to b7. Now both sides have their bishops staring down those long diagonals like snipers. Rook to e1 from Tal, just looking to get that rook on a potentially open file. And already from this move, you know plans are brewing in the mind of this brutal attacking legend. Beliavsky plays rook to c8. Same idea, getting pieces active, preparing for action. The exchange, pawn takes d5, and the recapture clarifies the center and makes the e5 square critical. Tal immediately occupies it with knight to e5. This move signals intent. The knight eyes f7 and g6 and hints at classic attacking motifs. Beliavsky responds with knight takes d4, eliminating central tension and asking Tal to justify any attack without structural leverage. Tal, like Tal does not hesitate. Bishop takes h7 check appears on the board, a thematic move which appears to be a sacrifice designed to expose the black king or at least seize the initiative. This is it. This is the Tal we were waiting for. You see, this move could tempt black to capture with the king, which no one evidently would love to have their king exposed when it's Tal at the other end of the board. So Beliavsky takes with a knight, which is typically, you could say, forced. Now the queen takes on d4, where white centralizes with tempo and keeps pressure on g7 and h4. What is striking is Beliavsky's composure. Instead of retreating into passivity, he developed with bishop to c5. That move is extremely important. It develops with tempo, hits the queen directly, and prepares to meet queen to h4 with bishop to e7. After queen to d3, he played pawn to d4, not merely defending but advancing. This move was psychologically important. Rather than worrying about Tal's threats, Beliavsky created one of his own, a protected passed pawn in the making and central space. The pawn on d4 restricts white's minor pieces and gives black a long-term asset that does not depend on tactics. Now Tal reorganizes with knight to e2, rook to e8, knight to g3. He's circling the king side, but Beliavsky calmly places queen to d5. When Tal plays knight to f3, Black continues with knight to g5. This is subtle. The knight heads towards e4 or h3. It also discourages f4 breaks, and now it appears to be that black is starting to out-coordinate white. Pawn to b4 from Tal expands on the queen side, but it slightly loosens c4. So Beliavsky plays bishop to f8, a practical move. He protects g7 and prepares flexibility. Then comes knight to h4 from Tal. This looks aggressive, but strategically it's slightly suspect. The knight on h4 is far from the center, so if black gets activity, it may become misplaced. So at this point, Beliavsky immediately seizes the moment and decides to trade rooks, which really doesn't work too great for white. Then, knight to e6. After rook to d1, targeting d4, Beliavsky doesn't defend passively. He plays pawn to a5. This is typical high-level thinking. Create counterplay on the wing when attacked in the center. If pawn takes a5, which Tal plays, then pawn takes a5 opens the a-file and gives black dynamic chances. After knight to g3, now comes queen to h5, and this is where the tone shifts completely. Combined with knight to g5 ideas, black is the one pressing. Tal tries knight to f3, Beliavsky responds bishop takes f3. Very concrete. He eliminates a key defender and damages white's pawn structure. After pawn takes f3, the white king no longer has proper cover, so knight to g5, Tal plays knight to g3 trying to regroup, but Beliavsky knows it's Tal and doesn't allow him as he strikes. Knight takes f3 check. King to g2, knight to h4 check, king to h3. Wow, Tal's king is on h3, not by sacrifice, not even by attack, by force. But now black sees there are no other safe checks to give and he must move his queen, so it goes to h6. Tal plays queen to e4, centralizing and trying to hold everything together, but Beliavsky doesn't hesitate. Knight to g6 with a discovered check. King to g2, then pawn to d3. This move is monstrous. It gives black a long-term winning plan. Now this pawn is not defended by any piece, so why not just take it and be up a pawn as the endgame approaches? Well, as much as it seems free, Tal cannot take this pawn with the queen as that would just lead to a fork by the knight next move. Same thing happens if he tries to take with the rook, and black would gladly take and be up 2 points after the exchange. Now the knight when it hops can also not be taken as it is defended by the queen. So whatever move comes next, it shouldn't be taking this pawn while that knight is still in that position. Quick pause, please take a moment to support the channel by subscribing to help us hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for doing that. Tal seems to understand this well and brings his bishop to the center where it has more control of squares. Rook to c4, pinning the bishop to the queen, but Tal moves it anywhere, sacrificing his bishop for a tactical idea. The idea is that if black takes the bishop, he loses his rook, but if he takes the queen, then Tal simply takes back, and after exchanges, he would be up material. But Beliavsky simply sees through this and decides to complicate the position with queen f4. He remains ice cold. Now the white queen must move, so it goes to a8, trying to start up counterplay by pinning the black bishop to his king. But black remains calm, and in his next move, sliding the queen so it now eyes the rook on d1. Now from this point onward, what Tal plays is somewhat semi-forced, because there would exist no better alternative. Even if it appeared to steer clear of danger for the moment, it always would have an inevitable end. Rather than move the rook, Tal unpins his knight and also creates luft for his king with pawn to h3. Now he could have played other moves here as well, but like I said, they only would delay, not stop what was coming. Queen takes, bishop takes, and knight takes. Black is up a full rook and positionally looking so much better. The rook invades decisively. It supports the passed pawn, controls the first rank, and cuts off defensive coordination. Queen to g5 check is met by knight to g6, and the evaluation is beyond rescue. The pawn on d3 will advance, the rook dominates entry squares, and white's king remains fatally exposed. So Mikhail Tal resigns. He had been defeated at his own game. But you see, Tal's style of play just wasn't for show, though. He was extremely good at attacking chess. But what happens when he sacrifices both his rooks in a game against a man who held the title of world champion for a decade?